Hey, welcome to Coffee, 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 your place for average Joe coffee reviews and book discussions. Today, we are discussing Never Split the Difference by former FBI lead hostage negotiator Chris Voss.
Why'd you do the Godfather voice?
From Iowa. Because he's from Iowa, but he sounds like he's from New York.
He does sound like he's from New York.
I'm a hostage negotiator. I'm going to talk to this guy.
He has a really good channel on YouTube where he talks about these things that we'll talk about.
Yeah. I think that the real reason why he's so good at negotiating is his voice.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the big things he talks about is your tone is so important when you're trying to negotiate. And everything is a negotiation in life. I mean,
everything. Marriage.
If you've got kids, dealing with your kids, you obviously have family members to deal with, friends, bosses,
people at
coworkers,
the cashier.
Yeah, just in general, like you're constantly negotiating with people, and your tone, like how you say things, is really important. Yeah, which is something because after reading this book, I realized I really have to watch my tone.
But see, as part of negotiating, I never said that.
Right. You just
and
let
guess
me come
what?
to that.
17 years later, it all worked out.
17 or 18?
Because you read the book.
18. Oh, okay. Yeah, we've
been married for 18 years, but you read the book before.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've read the book a couple of times now, and I love this book. Did you hold it up and show the people what it looks like? Yeah.
It's red and yellow, like McDonald's.
Yeah. I can't remember why I initially picked up the book.
Where would you have heard about him?
I can't remember who I heard about
Jordan
him from.
Peterson?
Maybe.
I don't even remember when you got it. When did you first get it?
I don't even remember. But I've given it as a gift, and people have found it helpful. But it's really good, even if you're not in sales or anything like that.
Everybody's in sales.
Everybody. Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's why sales is the oldest profession.
Yeah,
not the other thing.
But going back to Chris Voss's voice. That's kind of a tongue twister, but he does have like a very calming kind of a voice, but it is very important when you're in negotiations to remain calm. Like that is a thing that is so hard. If emotions are running high for you, it's very hard to calm yourself down. You don't get this because he's a very calm guy.
Cucumber.
Yeah, but I am not like that. Like I will get angry and then I have to start, calming myself down. And this book does make a lot of good points. So, like if you find you're like me, I think you'll enjoy this book because he points out why that's the wrong tactic to take. I think sometimes I kind of think, well, I want this person to understand this is important. But it's really not helpful because people just get defensive and they're not going to listen. Oh, yeah.
Once the voice raises, then people get defensive. So he calls it the late night FM DJ voice. Where you talk slowly and calmly and not condescendingly.
Right.
Which that might, if you talk slowly in a different way, then that might be condescending. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would be really bad.
That's not a way to get anything done.
Yeah, there is a question that he says to use, when you're trying to, if somebody asks you to do something, like they're saying that their way, they want
to give me $1 million.
And then a good question to ask is, how am I supposed to do that? And that question is a very powerful question.
I'm the burglar now. I'm going to pack up my gun and walk away because I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, but if you
ATM,
but you could ask that in a certain way, like, how am I supposed to do that? And that's not going to be helpful. So you have to really watch your tone in negotiation.
Well, you can start it by saying, I'd love to be able to give you $1 million, but how am I supposed to do that?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Then that you're like, well, okay, let's figure out a plan. How can I get you to give me the $1 million?
Right. Yeah. You make it the other person's problem a lot of times. Right. That's kind of like this. There's so many little interesting, things that can happen just based on a question that you ask. Like you are still in the negotiation. You're trying to help the other, you're trying to come to a resolution, but you're putting the monkey on the other person's back. I would love to help you with that. how can I do that?
Right. You just don't tell them you're putting a monkey on their back.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I would say, if you're dealing with kidnappers, that's a different situation than like your kids and stuff. But if you instead of like that is something I think with negotiation, people tend to think, oh, that's like deceptive, and you never want to be deceptive,
no.
Right? But you do want to negotiate effectively, and a big part of that is just listening to the other person, like getting to like understanding the other side. And that question is helpful, I think, to like, because then because it's now their problem that they're trying to solve, they may like start to say, well, I really need this money for, X, Y, and Z, or whatever the thing is. And then you can go from that. Right.
And you may find yourself in that type of situation, not with like hostage negotiating or somebody trying to rob you, unless you're at a car dealership and they're trying to rob you. But they may say to you, let's say you're negotiating the payment on the thing, if you do payments on cars. And they say, look, the payment's going to be $540. And you're like, it's a great car. Like, I love it. Everything about it. Which is opposite of what people would say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, the car's good, but it's blue and not black, and I wanted black. Instead, you focus on all the positives on the thing. It's like, it's a fantastic car. It's got everything I want in it. It's the right color. I just can't pay $540.
Right.
I can pay $480. That's what I can do. And that kind of stuff will lead you to a winning situation.
Yeah.
Pause for a moment. We are on a coffee channel, and today we are drinking. I'll run my mind here for a moment because I just made it. It is Kicking Horse's Hola blend.
Hola.
I almost said holla, but it's Hola blend. And you can see the review for it at a theater near you. No, not at a theater near you. We just did it. So you can look at the link in the description of this, or you can just search for it and it's on there. Anyway, it's great coffee. But I don't want to give away anything. Go watch the review.
Right. Yeah. So where were we?
We were talking about negotiating prices at a car dealership.
But telling the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And another thing that was interesting too to me was he said, it's fine to say I'm sorry. Like, I think that was something for a long time I thought, oh, if you say you're sorry, that looks like you're weak. And so you shouldn't say you're sorry in the middle of a negotiation. But actually it's really helpful to just say, I'm sorry. How am I supposed to do that?
Yeah. Or even like making yourself smaller, like in that I'm sorry. And it is still truthful if in that car negotiating thing you say, I can only pay $480. You may have $8,000 every month that you could put towards a car. But if you've decided that you can only pay $480, then that's what you can pay. So you're being truthful. Even if they ask you, well, you got more money than me. I have more money than that, but this is all I can pay on there.
Yeah. So one thing I would say the biggest thing that was helpful for me when I think about like the book and what have I really taken away from it, the big one for me was just learning that people are emotional. They're not rational.
Emotional?
Like, it's a mistake. Emotional. I see what you're doing. We haven't gotten to mirroring yet. But in my mind, I would get so frustrated with people because I would think this doesn't make logical sense, like we just need to do it this way or whatever the thing is. But learning that people are emotional, that's how people make decisions. It's been very helpful the past couple of years, especially during this whole pandemic, because since I read this, and it was certainly before the pandemic, I was able to remind myself, this is why people are reacting this way. It has nothing to do with statistics. So it doesn't matter. You can sit there and talk about statistics all day long and risk and things like that. And people aren't going to listen because they're afraid. Matter. Like, when people are afraid, you can't deal with them on that kind of a logical like level. You can't just say, well, here's the numbers. It's not going to work.
Right.
And just knowing that, even if it doesn't mean that I get anywhere with people, because it's not really my business.
Well, it helps you then to decide whether or not you need to even spend any more time with that person, trying to convince them through data about something.
Right. Yeah. It's better, I think, just to, if somebody's wanting to talk about statistics, then sure, go for it.
Now, it has numbers. But my question to you is, even though it has numbers, do those numbers mean something mathematical?
But, better to just try to like get them talking. I've found that's helpful. Just have people start telling you why do they think it's so scary, or or whatever the thing is. But the pandemic, especially,
that's part of the book too. Like if you're in a negotiation for the car, and you get the salesperson to talk more than you. That's a thing in sales. Most salesmen that you encounter won't shut up. But that's the improper way to sell. The best way to sell is to shut up and listen, because then you find out all the information. So, sorry, it's time for Kayla to go pray. So, if you are in that situation and you can shut up, the other person will give you all the information that you need in order to get to the point where you want to go. Because they'll start coming down. They're like, oh, you can only do 480. I'll go talk to the manager, and they'll come down, and then you just say the same thing again. You're like, it's really great. That's a great price. I just can't do that. And then they'll do the work for you.
Yeah. Learning how to shut up.
It's hard for me.
Yeah. I mean, even though I'm more of an introvert, I do find myself sometimes, because I want to say something to, but if I can just be quiet, then really the other person will continue to talk, and you can really learn a lot about people, which is good. I mean, this is not about manipulating people. This is just like about really making connection with people and understanding, because you really will, like when you understand the other person's point of view, you can feel a lot better a lot of times about like the whole situation, whatever the situation, if it's like kind of a stressful one, if you can really understand the other side, then you can have a better outcome, I think.
Yeah. And many people don't like silence. So it's a pretty easy thing to do. If you're silent, they'll start talking about it. So another tip that he talked about was mirroring.
Mirroring?
Mirroring.
Mirroring?
Mirroring? We could go on forever.
It doesn't work when you both know about,
but it might.
But it might. When you know you're about to talk about mirroring, it's almost impossible to get people to fall for it. But this is a fun little thing to try. All mirroring is just about listening to the person and then repeating back, just the last couple of words or the last word that they said. And usually what will happen a lot of times, not 100% of the time, but most of the time, the person will then just continue to talk. Like, so if you said, I
don't know, it doesn't work with our 9-year-old.
No.
He'll say, it's not fair that I have to do this. You're like, it's not fair? No. And then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
You're like, no. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, could you go further about it?
Yeah. But generally, people don't like silence.
Yeah.
And so if you can really just mirror and then shut up, very hard to do, but people will.
Maybe the question is that the best you can do on a price? Is that the best you can do? No, the best I can do? And then they'll say, well, yeah, I mean, like maybe you could come to, and then they'll give you the information. They'll tell you the number they're trying to get to. And even if it's not the number that you want to be at least you know what they're thinking without saying, what number are you thinking? Because that doesn't work.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's that mirror that gets them to explain further to you what they're trying to say without you saying, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you explain it in a different way? Because then that's when they'll start saying, what do you mean you don't understand? Don't you have a brain inside your head? That kind of thing.
And really the whole point of mirroring is the reason it works is that people then realize you're actually listening to what they're saying, like because you were able to repeat back, the last couple of words.
Of words. See how that works? I was listening.
It's really annoying. And people like, and he talked about like how in a hostage negotiation session, the FBI will have several agents listening to the same call because you miss so much. Just one individual person misses so much in a conversation because your mind is wandering. Like when another person, like when he's over here talking, a lot of times I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. And that's terrible too, because it really should be, I'm listening and then I'm responding. And it's the same way in any conversation. So many times you're thinking about what you want to say. You're not really listening to what the other person is saying.
Yeah. I think a lot of that has to do with that whole not wanting there to be silence. So if you're in a conversation with somebody and they're telling you a story And you're thinking, when they're done, there can't be any silence because that's awkward and weird. So I need to be able to say something right when they're done. That's not, I've found that the best conversations are those where a person is talking. Normally it's me. And then the person on the other end, I can see that they're actually thinking about what I said. And they're waiting until they have the response that they really want to say. Not that they're trying to like cover up their true gut reaction. But they do want to make sure that they say the thing they really want to say and not just something to fill the space. But that's where, if you are the good negotiator, you let people do that thing where they just kind of blurt out the next thing.
Right.
And then you win on the other end. And I think that is one of the keys, is you being quiet and letting the person spout it out.
Another thing that I learned was the importance of listening for the phrase, "that's right." And this is kind of, when I read it in the book, I kind of thought, I don't know, it feels like he's like splitting hairs here, because he says you do not want to hear "you're right." You want to hear "that's right." And in the book, he says something like, well, that seems kind of true. But like he says, when you tell somebody you're right, you're just basically saying, go away and leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I thought back, I was like, yeah, I think I do that. Like, I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're just trying to get people to shut up about whatever they're talking about. But if you hear "that's right," it's like, it's just a big hint that you are hearing them, that they are feeling like, yes, you get me. That's right. Like you are repeating something back, or you're phrasing something away that they are totally agreeing with. And so that's been helpful, because I'm always trying to get people to say "that's right." Like if there's something where I feel like I'm in a bit of a negotiation, if I can hear the other person say "that's right," I say, yes, I've done it the right way.
Right. Yeah. Once you hear that, it feels like you've accomplished something.
It's only happened a handful of times.
Yeah.
But I do like it when it happens.
Well, you have to practice.
Yeah. I do feel like I fail a lot at it, because I'm too quick to try to just, because I'm high D. So I'm like, I try to like run the conversation, and I try to get down to the bottom of things, and it's not the best negotiation tactic.
Yeah, I had a lot of opportunities to implement the things that I learned in the book when I was selling cars. And I would say maybe 50% of the time I I used the tactics appropriately. And then other times they just left my brain like completely
Right, yeah.
in the middle of the thing. So I think that in order to use this stuff in your life all the time, you have to practice it constantly.
Yeah, and keep it in mind. There's like a word, or not a word picture. What would you call this? He basically said the whole point is, the title is "Never Split the Difference," and his whole philosophy is splitting the difference, because that's what everybody thinks is like fair. Oh, well, it's
a win-win.
Come halfway and meet me halfway, but that's terrible. It's like two mismatched shoes is basically the picture in your head. So that's not good. Like if you end up in a situation where it's like, well, I want you to wear the black shoe, and no, I want to wear the brown shoe, and you meet halfway, that is literally a terrible deal. Right. But you met halfway, and so it kind of flips a lot of things on the head. Like if you've ever read Getting to Yes, which is another good book, it's also about negotiation. It's totally different. They're all about like trying to like kind of all compromise and stuff. And this is more like, no, you just work towards the right solution. So.
Yeah. And one thing we'll touch on is that he basically talks a lot about getting people to say no.
Yeah. People want to say no.
Yeah. That when they say yes, they start to feel vulnerable because they know that old trick, right? If I can get 5 small yeses out of you, then on the big yes, you'll, buy the car for $1,000 a month or something. But everybody knows that. And then they start to feel icky when that's happening.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we could talk about in this book and go on forever and ever and ever. But we want you to read it.
Yeah. I think it's it's one of those books that I feel like everybody could be helped by on some level.
That's right. The book is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. The publication is what's inside the book cover. We thank you for joining us for this book discussion. And until next time,
keep grinding.
Hey, thanks for hanging in there. And since you like to watch us, talk about coffee and nonsense, you should check out our Living Outside the Box podcast, where we talk about things that are of more substance with a little bit of nonsense in there. There's a link in the description.